Hi, welcome to Dave's 10-Minute Tech Talks, a series of short videos designed for business people and business managers to more readily understand the technologies that they have to deal with every day. My name is David Goad. I am a lecturer at Sydney University and at the Australian Graduate School of Management. I teach digital innovation and digital strategy. And these tech talks are extracts from the various presentations that I do for my students and the various consulting work that I do for my customers. I also consult part-time to customers on artificial intelligence and the Internet of Things. So I have a whole series of these talks, broken these talks down into separate sub-series. This series is particularly around artificial intelligence. The first video in the series, What is AI, has been released previously. This is the video where I'm going to be talking about management of risks of AI, and then will be one subsequent video in this particular series talking about how you deploy AI in your organization. As I said, this video will be specifically around how do you understand the risks of AI. Now, I'd like to be clear that I'm actually very, very pro artificial intelligence. I think artificial intelligence will have a lot of benefits for humanity and will certainly generate a lot of businesses in the short term for businesses and in the long term for businesses. But I do think all businesses and all organizations need to be aware of the risks that AI pose in terms of their organization and what things they need to do or to put in place to manage those risks from the use of artificial intelligence. So, risk management with artificial intelligence. As I've described previously, a common definition of artificial intelligence is using technologies to make machines act in ways that are more human-like. More often than not, these AI technologies use tools such as machine learning and neural networks, which are essentially complex mathematics used to model reality and to therefore be able to predict how reality is going to work and therefore respond to it in certain ways. In using these mathematical models, there are, however, as I said, a number of things you need to think about. The first one is algorithmic bias. One of the more common forms of artificial intelligence is something referred to as supervised machine learning. This is where people actually provide data to the artificial intelligence and machine learning algorithms to train them. The problem here is that if you train the algorithm with the incorrect data, then it will come out with the incorrect decisions. So a very classic example of this is there was a researcher in the US who was working on a particular machine vision technology. When she put a picture of her photo of herself into the actual tool, it came back, and the story goes that it actually said that she was an ape or a gorilla. Now, the reason for that was because the actual machine learning algorithm or machine vision algorithm had been trained on older white men. She was actually an African American female. So there's an example where if you put the wrong training data in, the machine has bias and it will come to incorrect decisions. The challenge here is that oftentimes the data scientists that are building these AI tools don't realize that they're actually putting in a biased data set. And as a consequence, you can actually have bias in the decision making of the tool right from the start. So you need to be careful that when you're actually building these algorithms, these artificial intelligence tools or machine learning tools, that you actually are not building into them algorithmic bias. This is particularly problematic for the form of machine learning referred to as supervised learning. Another issue that you have to worry about in terms of the actual AI models themselves is what they refer to as algorithmic inaccuracy. This is where the incorrect form of algorithm has been used, or there's poor data quality, or you have a suboptimal choice of algorithms. I myself have seen this quite a few times where the data scientist applies a few basic algorithms, gets a relatively decent result, and decides to go with that without being exhaustive in terms of their analysis, in terms of all available algorithms that can be used and the methods that can be used to find the most optimal result. They also don't look at the data and understand the data to see where it's showing that the model may be incorrect. So the algorithmic inaccuracy due to poor design is a very, very common fault. The other issue that you have to be aware of is algorithmic misuse. The idea here is that, particularly for certain forms of machine learning or artificial intelligence, not all, but certain ones, for example, neural networks, the neural networks can be so complex that it'll be impossible for a human being to actually understand how did they come to a decision. Some of the neural networks I've built for machine vision have had over 100,000 nodes in them. So it's very, very difficult to actually understand how the AI is coming to the decision. You know that it's come to a good quality decision because you've tested it, but you don't know how it's come to that decision. So one of the things they talk about in terms of artificial intelligence is that AI, particularly neural networks, are very good at telling you a correlation but not causality. This can be very problematic if people actually don't understand how the toolset is coming to its decision. For example, if you're using AI in a medical diagnosis field, are you going to accept when an AI recommends to take a particular drug if you don't understand why it's making that recommendation? So there are challenges with regards to misusing algorithms and not actually understanding how they're actually coming up with the recommendations and incorrectly interpreting the actual algorithms themselves. Other issues with regards to artificial intelligence is the actual technology. If you are building an artificial intelligence tool that's going to make decisions automatically for you, then this raises additional risks of cybersecurity, because if someone actually hacks into those tools and changes the underlying code, they could actually cause a secure breach. And oftentimes it's hard to understand whether there has been a hack in this code because the code is very complex. The other issue is a lot of modern artificial intelligence or machine learning is based on open source technologies. So there's a lot of open source libraries that data scientists will use to build the various models in their machine learning algorithms. The problem with that is because these are open source, they're subject to change, either intentionally or unintentionally, and therefore subject to hack from a cybersecurity perspective. So this is another challenge that you have to be aware of. The other issue with regards to technology is system change management. So if you have a situation where your artificial intelligence or machine learning tool is making decisions based on certain data in the system, if there was a change upstream in terms of your business systems, in terms of what that data meant, for example, a change in definition or a change in the range of the data or various inputs, that could actually impact the decision being made by the artificial intelligence or machine learning algorithm. As a consequence, any system changes have to be monitored closely and the AI algorithms revalidated. If your IT folks or your data scientists are not managing this correctly, that you could get algorithms that at one point were working quite effectively and then stop working and then actually make very, very poor decisions. Other issues you need to be aware of is in terms of risk management with regards to artificial intelligence is data protections and regulatory compliance. Most people are aware of the new general data protection regulation that was released by the EU a couple of years back. They are aware of the protection around privacy and the use of data, but what people don't realize is that in that specific legislation, there were a number of specific clauses released or put into law specifically related to the use of AI or machine learning. Specifically, these clauses talked about the right to know. In other words, if people are using or an organization is using machine learning to make a decision about someone, then people have the right to know how that decision was being made. The other thing is that the actual legislation prevents the use of algorithmic decision making or AI based on certain characteristics. I think there's like 15 different characteristics, for example, race, sex, these kinds of things. So as a data scientist, you need to be aware of these legislations and regulations that have broad impact, not just in the EU, but outside of the EU because of the way they're worded, which could limit your use of algorithms and artificial intelligence. The other issue with regards to regulatory compliance and AI is just this idea that because these algorithms are so complex, often it is hard to actually represent to a regulator how you're using them or how they're coming to those decisions. So oftentimes, if you have a regulator coming to you questioning how you've made a decision in a particular area about, for example, if you're in the financial services, mortgage loan applications, or in other areas, maybe in manufacturing operations, and the regulator is coming to you from a health and safety perspective to see how these AIs work, is often very, very difficult to actually describe to the regulator why it's making a decision. Again, artificial intelligence is very good at determining correlation, but not actually telling you causality. So this can be a challenge as well in terms of using AI and reporting it back. Another issue with regards to AI is basically just corporate culture, and also this issue of product management. So in this particular issue here, we're talking about corporate culture, and I've had to deal with this personally myself on several occasions with the organizations that I'm consulting to in terms of using artificial intelligence. When you get a huge amount of organizational resistance to the use of AI, because in some cases, use of these artificial intelligence tools can be significantly impacting various departments within an organization in terms of how they operate, how many people they need to do that particular job, the work that they actually have to do, and that change management being so significant, people can resist that. The other issue that I've seen with regards to AI is the issue of product management. these days, just about every organization, when they give you a new product, is talking about, oh, they have AI built into the actual tool. You know, for the most part, just trying to put AI into everything to make it sound cool. The real question is this an appropriate use of AI? Are there risks associated with the AI that's built in that tool? And are people misrepresenting what those actual AI capabilities within those tools can do? So AI culture and another issue you have with regards to risk management with AI is the issue of people. This issue of roles and responsibilities. So the challenge that you get is that more often than not, organizations will hire a bunch of data scientists or technologists. They'll come in, they'll ask them to put AI into a solution, and then the business people will walk away, and they won't provide any oversight or governance of what these technologists are doing, because the business are not working closely with the technologists to make sure that these models are true representations of what's going on in their organization and making good decisions. You can get a very, very increased risk of problems happening as a result of putting those technologies into place. So you need to make sure you're putting proper governance and regulation in place within your organization, and that the business is closely managing and working with the technologists to put effective AI in place. The other challenge that you're going to have if you want to use artificial intelligence in your organization is simply skill sets. There are stories of high quality data scientists just finishing their PhD in the US, graduating and then being hired by large technology vendors and paying them close to $1.5 million in annual salary. What this means is any good data scientists or good technologists who really, really understand artificial intelligence are a premium resource and being paid a lot of money to actually do these projects. What that can mean is that it can be very, very difficult to get these resources, and then if you get them into your organization and you're building models, they can be easily poached over by other organizations who are willing to spend a lot of money on them. You have over-reliance on these resources who actually understand the models because they're very complex, that leave the organization, and then you have issues with regards to maintaining those models ongoing. The other challenge with regards to, and one of the last challenges that we'll talk about today with regards to AI is the issue of the market. There is, so, and the issue here is really, the issue with the market is that competition is slowly decreasing. So if you wanted to see who were the sort of the leading players in terms of artificial intelligence and who were the best technologies, you would often watch these sort of global competitions that they have every year. So in the AI space or machine learning space, they have competitions every year. For example, there's one very well known called ImageNet, where the technologists and the data scientists, they compete by trying to build the best algorithms to read photographs, for example, or pictures. There's other competitions around, natural language processing and other different types of AI. And what you'd see is every year people would compete, various organizations would win, and you get a kind of a view of who's sort of the leading minds in that space with regards to using machine learning. If you watch those competitions, what you realize is over the last 5 or 6 years, 5 or 6 years ago, it used to be universities that were typically winning those competitions. In the last 2 to 3 years, it's actually the software vendors. Because what's happening is the software vendors are actually going out and buying up all these the high price skill sets. As I said, the salaries of the data scientists are being driven up, and they're basically, so a lot of this research is coming in house and becoming proprietary. Essentially, what's happening is over the course of time, the capabilities in terms of artificial intelligence are consolidating into a few of the very, very large vendors. One way of actually seeing this is actually looking at the number of acquisitions made by the global tech giants around AI technologies. So if you look at this chart, which was pulled, you can see the actual source at the bottom, CB Insights. You can see that over the course of the last few years, just about every major technology vendor has been gobbling up all the smaller AI vendors. And so you're getting a natural consolidation in the market, which is then creating risk because you have fewer and fewer players, that are actually managing these technologies. The other issue that you have with regards to the systemic risks of using these technologies is that organizations are all using very, very similar algorithms or very, very similar tools. If these algorithms are oversensitive to certain variables, then you can have issues. For example, spot trading on the stock market and having stock market collapse because they're all operating together. So this whole issue that the market is slowly consolidating over time and the knowledge set around AI is getting into fewer and fewer vendors is going to become a challenge in terms of skill sets and maintaining those skill sets. And what's happening now is a lot of these algorithms are becoming proprietary because the major vendors are bringing them in-house and they're not really sharing the technology externally. So there is a challenge with that as well. So one of the things you want to be really aware of is you pick the vendors that you're using wisely, and also recognize that not every vendor is good in every form of AI. So you may use one particular vendor for certain types of AI, and you may use another vendor for other types of artificial intelligence. For example, one vendor you may use for machine vision, and another one you may use for natural language processing capabilities. So in summary, I would say to you, there's a number of what I would refer to as smart questions that you should be asking yourself in your IT organization when developing your AI strategy to make sure that you're reducing the risk. The first one is you need to talk to your consultants and your technologists that you're using and your data scientists to make sure that they're actually trained in ethical AI. Do they actually understand the regulations that are governing the use of AI? Do they actually understand how they're using the data? Are they making sure that the AI is making good decisions and ethical decisions? Regardless of your position on the ethics of AI or not, you have to recognize that as a company or organization, if you're not careful about how you use AI, then it can actually not only be an ethical issue, but then represent a brand risk. For example, a lot of organizations, both in Europe and in the US, have gotten a lot of negative publicity because of their inappropriate use of AI because they didn't really understand the ethical aspects of how they were using it. The next question that you really have to ask yourself is, have you done a proper risk assessment? Have you actually brought an expert in to actually take a look at your use of artificial intelligence and making sure that you're addressing all the risks that I previously stated and making sure that you have a plan and a strategy to manage all those risks? The other thing that I think you need to make sure of is that your business is fully engaged with the data scientists that are building these AI tools. As I said, one of the things I quite often see is that the business brings in the data scientists, asks them to put some AI into place, and then they walk away. They don't actually see what they're doing. They don't actually validate the models. They don't actually make sure that they're making the right decisions. They just sort of treat carte blanche what the data scientists tell them as being the truth because they get nervous about the math. They don't really understand it, and they don't want to ask questions. And I would discourage this. Even if you don't understand the mathematics that's used behind artificial intelligence, you should ask lots of questions. You should challenge them. You should bring in other consultants or other third parties to actually validate what your consultants or what your data scientists are saying. You really need to think about putting governance processes in place. And this is probably my last and probably most important point. Do you have proper governance processes? Have you thought about all the different risks and issues? Have you put processes into place to make sure that your data scientists are being properly managed, that they're acting in an ethical way, that they actually understand the issues of bias and regulation, and that they're managing everything correctly? Do you have actually processes in place? Because artificial intelligence is here to stay. I have no doubt that more organizations will be using it more and more. So if that's the case, then as a major technology, which could potentially give you a competitive advantage for your organization, you really need to think about your governance processes and your frameworks in terms of how you're going to manage it. That's it. That's my talk for today on AI risks and governance and how to manage them. If you have any questions, feel free to drop me a line at david.goat@sydney.edu.au, or if you want, you can ping me on LinkedIn, and we can have a chat and I can answer any additional questions you have. But hopefully you found this useful and interesting, and thanks for your time.